this guy's watching me go to the toilet. He's watching me in my bedroom. He's, like everything's being recorded. And that's when I realized that's how he's getting away with blackmailing everybody.
It's well known that Jeffrey Epstein had cameras all over his various properties, his victims, and the FBI have confirmed as much. But where are all the tapes? So far, all we've seen from the Epstein files are pictures of his rich and powerful friends when they know the cameras are on them. What happened to all the security footage and the secret video recordings? In a moment, we'll be hearing from Epstein's former boss, the late Stephen Hoffenberg, who says the tapes are in a secret location. Plus, the FBI file that suggests Donald Trump warned police about Epstein 20 years ago. And the lawmakers naming names in Congress.
This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
But first, a quick look at why it's so important to find the missing tapes.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question. Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
The Epstein files contain 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. Anyone can look them up on the US Department of Justice website. But beware, you'll see Epstein chasing what appears to be young girls in his kitchen. Prince Andrew on all fours in Epstein's house. Israel's former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who met Epstein dozens of times. Bill Gates pictured with women, their identities now protected. Noam Chomsky, arguably the world's most famous public intellectual, on Epstein's jet. Jess Staley, then a senior executive at JP Morgan Chase and later right at the top of Barclays Bank. And then there's Peter Mandelson, a prominent British politician in his underpants at Epstein's apartment in Paris, and with Epstein again on his island. As the DOJ likes to say, being in the Epstein files is not necessarily proof of any wrongdoing. But it's worth noting all of these men were associating with Epstein after he was convicted of soliciting prostitution with a minor in 2008, after he was officially labelled a sex offender. As damaging as some of these videos and images undoubtedly are, they're not the blackmail videos described by his victims, including Maria Farmer and Virginia Giuffre.
He showed me where the men monitoring everything were. And I saw all the cameras. What it was like old televisions, basically, like stacked, but they were monitors inside this cabinet. And there were men sitting here, and I looked on the cameras and I saw toilet, bed, toilet, bed. I'm like, I am never gonna use the restroom here, and I'm never gonna sleep here. It was very obvious that they were like monitoring private moments.
I was so utterly mortified. I was like, this guy's watching me go to the toilet. He's watching everything that happens in the massage room. He's watching me in my bedroom. He's, like everything's being recorded. And that's when I realized that's how he's getting away with blackmailing everybody.
While some have attempted to cast doubt on these two women in the past,
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady.
The Epstein files have only served to bolster their claims, revealing for the first time that Epstein did direct staff to set up secret cameras. Let's get 3 motion-detected hidden cameras, he tells his pilot, Larry Vysotsky, in 2014. I already purchased from the Spy Store in Fort Lauderdale. I'm installing them into Kleenex boxes now. Epstein's American Express account corroborates the purchases, worth over $1,000. On the same day, Epstein received an email from another person whose name has been redacted, saying, if you want to put cameras in the house, it will have to be very discreetly done. The Russians may come in handy. Poland's Prime Minister, like so many Westerners, has jumped at the chance to link Russia with Epstein, saying Moscow was using him to gain kompromat or compromising material on their enemies.
Zakłada, że jest bardzo prawdopodobne, że była to przygotowana operacja rosyjskiego KGB.
While the West is looking to link Epstein with Russia, most reports suggest that the United States and Israel were his handlers. In 2019, the journalist Vicky Ward wrote that Alex Acosta, the former US attorney involved in Epstein's 2008 conviction, said he was told to take it easy on Epstein because he, quote, belonged to intelligence. Acosta has denied saying this, sort of.
I would hesitate to take this reporting as fact.
But a newly discovered document in the Epstein files raises this question again. According to an FBI form, a so-called confidential human source, or CHS, claimed that Epstein's one-time lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, told Acosta that Epstein belonged to both US and Allied intelligence services. The source also claims that Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him, and that Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent. Bear in mind, though, that the FBI notes that CHS reports are often unverified raw intelligence, but this account is similar to what Epstein's former boss, Stephen Hoffenberg, told us in 2020.
What they were doing was gathering information that would be important for Israel or the UK.
We know that Epstein had secret cameras and staff monitoring security footage, and this may even be a snippet of the secret filming. But where is the rest? Where's the video of the rich and powerful men who so enjoyed Epstein's company? In the first raid on Epstein's mansion in Palm Beach, Florida in 2005, investigators found 2 hidden cameras, but the various recording devices were missing, or in some cases wiped. Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Reiter believes Epstein had been tipped off.
6 computer hard drives had been ripped out of the wall, leaving only dangling wires behind. And surveillance cameras had been disconnected.
In the 2019 raid, FBI agents did manage to seize large quantities of evidence, including external hard drives and DVDs. But even then, an FBI agent reported that some evidence had been removed from the house by one of Epstein's lawyers and then brought back, while the FBI obtained a warrant to take the material away. Nevertheless, there was hope that Epstein's client list, the men he was allegedly filming and blackmailing, would be somewhere in that hall.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
That statement got many people very excited, but the Attorney General had apparently misspoken. While the FBI did conclude that Epstein had harmed over 1,000 victims, it found there was in fact no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals.
She said, "It's sitting on my desk right now to review."
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to.
A number of US lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, still have questions. The Epstein files are revealing, and they have been damaging to some. But they've left many wondering if the most serious videos and tapes, the so-called KOMPROMAT, is still out there.
How will we know if this bill has been successful? We will know when there are men, rich men in handcuffs being perp-walked to the jail. And until then, this is still a cover-up.
We're about to bring in our panel, but first, let's hear more from Epstein's former boss, Stephen Hoffenberg. I asked him why he's so sure the tapes exist.
I've spoken with the eyewitnesses, and I was very aware from actual witnesses reporting to me that the films were taken in all the homes and were transported to Ohio for distribution and safekeeping. The answer is yes, that's all true. The FBI knows that. There's no doubt that there was filmmaking done of the powerful people and the raping of the young girls.
So you expect,
yes.
Do you expect these tapes to come out soon? And what legal mechanism will be used to release them, if so?
If the FBI could do what they wanted, they would release all the evidence. The FBI has the evidence, and they understand it, and they can release it. The question is if the politicians will allow the release of the evidence.
Okay, let's bring in our panel. And today we have Yasmine Meyer, a lawyer for a number of Epstein's victims, Barry Levine, an investigative journalist who's been following the story for over 20 years, and finally, Brooke Harrington, an expert on the behaviour of the super-rich. Welcome to the panel, everyone. Barry, if I could start with you. Do you agree that Epstein was making secret recordings and that we haven't yet seen them in the Epstein files?
Well, we know that there's more than 2 million files that are still missing or that have not been brought forward by the Department of Justice to the public. I do believe that there's been secret recordings. We know that going back before the original police investigation in Palm Beach, Florida, that Jeffrey Epstein had asked the local Palm Beach police to help him install surveillance cameras in his home because he told them that he feared that employees of his were stealing. So I absolutely believe there's cameras not only in that house, but also in New York, the Virgin Islands, and New Mexico and Paris.
There are FBI forms in the Epstein files that suggest he was working with Israeli intelligence, gathering KOMPROMAT. Does that sound plausible?
I think it does. We know that he had extensive ties not only to the Israelis, but also to the Russians. Jeffrey Epstein fancied himself as something of a spy. And there's no question in my mind from my investigative research for my book, The Spider, that Jeffrey Epstein maintained blackmail material on many rich, powerful individuals, including government officials across the world.
Yasmine, in your experience as a lawyer, what have you heard about these secret recordings?
Well, the extent of these secret recordings could be tremendous. Now that the fact of the recordings is corroborated in emails and financial records and other records in the files, it's their existence, the actual recordings themselves, are a conspicuous absence. My understanding is that Epstein had an entire home in his Manhattan home filled with CCTV footage of what may have been every room in that house. And we know he abused women and he met with high-profile individuals there. So the absence of these recordings from the files is striking.
And do you have reason to believe that the DOJ and the FBI are holding back videos?
Well, the Epstein Files Transparency Act provides in the text of the legislation a basis for withholding information that could compromise an ongoing investigation. And this provision could potentially be used to withhold the most sensitive or relevant documents under the pretense of an investigation. And even more concerning is that investigations are entirely discretionary, which means the government can claim to be commencing an investigation and decide at any point not to continue the investigation. And this results in never having to potentially disclose these documents. There's the potential essentially to be withholding all documents that implicate wealthy or powerful individuals.
But fortunately, congressmen like Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna are pushing the DOJ to release as much as possible. They've even threatened and indeed have started naming the rich men whose names have been redacted when they stand up in Congress, including Les Wexner. Again, the DOJ will always say just because someone's mentioned in the files doesn't mean they've done anything wrong. What is the significance of Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's efforts to push the DOJ?
The purpose of naming the people connected to Epstein is so that the truth will finally be revealed. Anyone whose name is in the files and is not a victim, if their name is not revealed, that person is receiving a benefit from their connection to a known pedophile and sex predator. And while an association does not mean criminality, anybody who is suspected of wrongdoing should be investigated. And if it's confirmed that they engaged in wrongdoing, they need to be prosecuted. And at this point, protecting abusers from reputational harm or embarrassment or legal consequence seems to be taking priority over providing justice and closure to the survivors, and that cannot be allowed to continue.
Now, Brooke, you've carried out extensive research on the super rich. Do you buy this kompromat theory?
It seems plausible, and I'll tell you why I think that, because some very eminent sociologists who study criminals, like the mafia, say that this is how people get initiated into criminal gangs. Whether it's street gangs or very high-level white-collar criminals. What they do is they basically require each other to participate in some sort of illegal, compromising activity. They must leave an evidence trail, like maybe in a street gang, you have to murder somebody close to you, and it has to be filmed, and that can be used against you. or one of my colleagues at the University of Chicago who studies wealthy offshore investors in East Asia says those men require each other to participate in orgies together in order to be considered trustworthy enough to engage in financial deals. And they keep that compromat on each other. So in some respects, what Epstein is alleged to have done with the tapes is par for the course for rich guys who are up to no good.
Let's move on to some other Epstein Files revelations now. And it turns out that this photograph is genuine and not a fake, as others had suggested.
I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken.
Let's see what Ghislaine Maxwell has to say about it.
It's a fake. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's real for a second. In fact, I'm sure it's not. There's never been an original. I don't believe it happened. And certainly the way as described would have been impossible.
And yet in 2015, Ghislaine Maxwell sent an email to Epstein, perhaps for his approval, in which she writes, in 2001, I was in London when blank met a number of friends of mine, including Prince Andrew. A photograph was taken as I imagine she wanted to show it to friends and family. Yasmine, it's just as the late Virginia Giuffre described. It's London, 2001, Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell in the background. Is this an important vindication for her and other victims?
It is. It shows how much the truth has been obscured and covered up to protect the powerful, and this has all happened at the expense of the victims. We also saw this with Maria Farmer's complaint. For years, she was outspoken about the fact that she complained to the FBI in 1996 that Epstein was a sexual predator, and the files vindicate her and show that the FBI did, in fact, document her report, proving the FBI knew about Jeffrey Epstein since at least the mid-1990s and vindicates her the same way that it does Virginia Giuffre.
And Brooke, what we're seeing here is the super rich, the powerful, the well-known trying to discredit their victims. Is that their typical MO?
Yes, it's also the MO of everyone who is a sexual predator. Some people just have more money and professional expertise to throw at the problem. You saw what happened when Brett Kavanaugh was being vetted for his Supreme Court post. Apparently, there were thousands and thousands of calls to the FBI tip line talking about all his various misconduct, and all of that information somehow never got followed up on or was lost. There are all kinds of levers you can pull to make sure that victims get silenced. And it seems like Jeffrey Epstein knew where all those levers were, and he pulled them all.
Barry, also from the Epstein files, we have this FBI interview summary said to be with Palm Beach's police chief, which appears to reveal that Donald Trump was one of the first people to warn police about Epstein. It says Trump called the PBPD, Palm Beach Police Department, to tell him, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. Trump told him people in New York knew Epstein was disgusting. Trump said Maxwell was Epstein's operative. She is evil, and to focus on her. Trump told blank that he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, and Trump got the hell out of there. Trump was one of the very first people to call when people found out that they were investigating Epstein. Barry, this actually appears to reflect well on Trump, if only he hadn't said he didn't know anything about Epstein's behavior.
Well, you have to understand that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends for 15 years, both in New York and Palm Beach, Florida. When the police did their original investigation in Palm Beach, they turned up phone messages between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. I view it quite differently. I view it that Donald Trump was trying to get ahead with the Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder of criticizing Jeffrey Epstein and kind of distancing himself from what went on. We have allegations from victims that Jeffrey Epstein brought Donald Trump, brought one girl over to Donald Trump to introduce her, saying, isn't this a good one? This was a 14-year-old victim. We have an allegation from another woman that Donald Trump groped her in Jeffrey Epstein's presence. So while Donald Trump has never been accused by law enforcement of taking part in this, there's still a lot of questions. Donald Trump said that he was never on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. And in fact, the files pointed out that in fact he was on the plane, and he was on the plane with at least one victim who was a potential witness in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So I have a lot of issues with Donald Trump's statements. He has made many contradictions in terms of what he has said about Jeffrey Epstein over the years.
Right. In his defense, unlike dozens and dozens of men who did associate with Epstein after his conviction in 2008, there is no evidence and no pictures that Donald Trump was amongst them. There are no pictures of him after 2008, and there are no entries in the Epstein files of him associating with Trump after 2008 conviction, unlike so many others. We have to move on to this new video of Ghislaine Maxwell in her cell at the infamous Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. It's dated July 2020, so Maxwell was then being held after her arrest and awaiting a decision on her bail application. Now, this week, she pleaded the Fifth during a congressional hearing.
I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the US Constitution.
A lawyer told the committee that Maxwell is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. What do you think, Yasmine? Should the president give Ghislaine Maxwell clemency if she hands over more information?
Absolutely not. There are other avenues for this information. Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted of child sex trafficking, and she should serve the entire rest of her sentence.
Barry, I can see you agree with Yasmine.
Oh, totally. I mean, this is a woman who is a monster. I mean, she needs to remain behind bars. The four victims who testified against her at trial were extremely compelling in terms of what they presented about her. She should, without question, never be released until her sentence is complete. The one thing that she does have that we need to get to is that she has said that her lawyers have said in their habeas corpus appeal that there were 25 men who did deals with accusers, secret settlements, and that she wasn't aware of that information at the time of her trial, or she would have called these men as witnesses. This is a new wrinkle in this story, and we do need to get to that, but by no means should she ever receive clemency.
Thomas Massie says, we'll know this is a cover-up until we see rich and powerful men doing the perp walk and going to prison. Barry, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, Thomas Massie is, with Ro Khanna, spearheaded the Transparency Act. And really, we need to, for the sake of the survivors, get to whether or not there can still be any type of investigation or prosecution of these men. Thomas Massie said that he was aware of 20 men, according to FBI 302 witness reports that took part in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking. There was a prosecution memorandum that was written to the Justice Department 4 months after Jeffrey Epstein's death, examining possible individuals who could be prosecuted. So we have not been fully made aware by the Department of Justice because of all the redactions in these files as to efforts that the FBI made to investigate these men. This has been a cover-up from the very beginning, and until we get a full investigation of these men, these victims and survivors will never see accountability.
And Brooke, just a final question. I know you've researched the super rich quite a lot, and I just wonder if you can tell us why so many of them fall into depravity.
Well, normal people like us think that if we became billionaires, we would just sit on a beach somewhere and enjoy ourselves and not give a darn what anyone else thought of us. But it's not like that. For people of immense wealth, life is just a continuation of middle school, in which the purpose of their having money is to compete to be at the top of the status ladder. They want to be the most popular boy. And so what you end up with is like a supercharged version of Lord of the Flies, where all these men are competing for status, but they can't compete in the ways that sort of middle-class people might do. You know, buy another house, buy another boat, get another trophy wife. They've done all that. And so the stakes become higher and higher. And unfortunately, the stakes seem to have evolved from the old school thing of let me endow a university or a public library to let me prey upon the most vulnerable members of society. Their status competition specifically takes the form of sadistic predation on women and children, and all manner of kind of gross out tactics to see this is how macho and depraved and ruthless and heartless I can be. And, let me show you the tapes. Let me show you the evidence. They're not trying to hide it from one another. They're using it as status bargaining chips to climb up their stupid little ladder of prominence to be the top dog.
Brooke Harrington, Barry Levine, and Yasmine Meyer, thank you all very much for your analysis. Really appreciate that. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes, go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. You'll see we have quite an extensive back catalogue of Jeffrey Epstein programs. Until next week then, goodbye.